Here we're going to graph the function. All of these things below here are going to help us graph that function here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the degree. First, I got to remember though that x minus 1 squared is like saying x minus 1 times x minus 1, because our degree here is actually going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And our leading coefficient here is negative. So what that means is that my general shape is going to look like an M. And so my end behavior as x goes towards negative infinity, or as we go to the left, y is going to go towards negative infinity. As x goes towards positive infinity, or as we go to the right on our graph, y, well, okay, it's still going towards negative infinity. Now the zeros here, I can come back to my original function here to find my zeros. I know if I plug in a 1, that's going to make this whole thing 0. If I plug in negative 3, and if I plug in negative 1. So I'm actually going to plot those points on here. My zeros, 1, negative 3, and negative 1. And the deal here, actually, what I want to make sure that we understand is that when x is 1, it's going to bounce off of that point. So what I mean by that is when we get to that, I'll show you when we're graphing, actually. The y-intercept, the last thing here is when x is 0, that tells me the y-intercept. So if I were to plug in x equals 0, then that would tell me my y-intercept. So I'm going to plug in 0 for all of the x values, squared, plus 3, and 0 plus 1. And now I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So negative 1 squared is positive 1. And then I'm going to attach this negative to it. And I'm going to multiply that by 3. And multiply that by 1. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Times 1 is negative 3. So my y-intercept is at negative 3 here. So now, the above the x-axis and below the x-axis, you're going to see what that means in just a second. Because I know my general shape is like an M here based off of the degree and the leading coefficient, I'm going to start at the bottom left here and go up towards my first point, which is at negative 3. At negative 3, it's going to go through this point here because we have x plus 3 right here. I'm going to come back down through negative 1. I know it's going to go down to this y-intercept here, and when I'm coming up to my final 0, which is at 1, which remember, if we look back here, that is what is squared. That is going to tell us it's going to bounce off of that point there and go back down to finish off our M shape. So above the x-axis, the only thing that's above the x-axis is between negative 3 and negative 1. Every other interval here is below the x-axis.